So, you have your plan, right? You know what you want to do. You know how you want to approach it. You've thought of all the pros and cons. So now you want to move forward towards your idea. That's great. But what are you going to do when there's a roadblock? There's an unexpected obstacle. What do you do when the plan doesn't hold? And you gotta adjust and adapt. I mean, the answer is right there in itself. You adjust and you adapt. I've been in many situations where I've had plans and those plans don't go as I thought they were gonna go. You know, initially for the Navy, my plan was to go there for 8 years, finish my degree while I'm in, and then, get a good job and go from there. What ended up happening is I ended up having a suicide attempt. I ended up cutting my career short to 4 years. And then after that, once I got to 4 years, I was back in Texas. And at that point, I had to think of a new plan. And I think the best thing that I've done consistently is if something doesn't go awry, I don't rush. The only time I make a decision that's quick is if that situation needs a quick decision. But if it doesn't need a quick decision, I've always taken my time. And when I got to Texas, I took my time. I went back. I went back to the job I had before the military at Best Buy. And then, I just started working on my Dodo 2 album. And what I ended up doing, after some time of thinking and trying to figure out what I need to do, I followed my instincts, which was I need to go back to California. So that's what I did. I moved back to California. So when I moved back to California, I slowly started building my life there. And it ended up being the right decision. And I ended up finishing my degree. It was years later, but I still ended up finishing my degree. So, the unexpected happened. Unforeseen circumstances, whether it's trauma, whether it's just any roadblock that you don't see coming. It happens, but you just gotta adjust, you gotta adapt. So that's what I did. When I took that government job and I moved with my wife, I didn't foresee that I was gonna lose it in 6 months. I didn't think they would just let me go like that, knowing that I just moved across the country for that job. I didn't see that coming. But in the end, there's no feeling sorry for yourself or being sad. You gotta make a plan and you gotta find a way to make it work. So when that happened, I was like, I need a job immediately. I don't care what it is. So one place I knew you can get a job is retail. So that's where I started applying. I just applied to retail positions. And then lo and behold, I go to Walgreens and they offer me a job. So I take it. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to school, right? So I adjust and I adapt. I get a new job. It's lower paying, but in the end, it's still a paycheck. I'm still in school, So I'm working this job. I finally finished my degree. I used that degree to get a better paying job. I just adjusted and I adapted. There's nothing you can do when bad situations happen, but adjust your plan and find a way to make it work. And, I went to Johns Hopkins. The plan initially was I'm going to go there, finish my GI Bill, and then get a student loan and, pay it off like that, and then finish my degree in a few years. What ended up happening, I'm doing good for a year, and then at the end of that year, I got 2 classes where I have, those group projects, but basically you're being graded with your group. And your group members also grade you. So your grade depends on not just the group project, but on what they feel about you. And in my case, I felt like my groups, they didn't really partake to me. They didn't like my style. They didn't like how I did things. In one of my classes, you get a review from your peers, and they tell you what your peers think about you. They told me I was pessimistic. Was I ever negative to anybody? No. If anyone had an idea or anything like that, did I tell them the pros and cons of the idea and whether I think it would work? Yeah, of course. Because when you're making plans, you gotta think of all those things. But they took those as being pessimistic, which in turn, I know from that they gave me a bad grade. So, I was stuck in a situation where I could be on academic probation, and it's either that's going to hold me back and push back my timeline for finishing my degree and potentially get me kicked out of school, or I can just adjust. So that's what I did. Before I could see what was going to happen, and before I let that happen, I fixed it. I transferred, went to a new school, same MBA, just a different program, and I'm doing good in my classes. So for me, it was the right decision. I adjusted. I did what I had to. In the end, when you're in these situations, you got to think about the long-term implications of what you're doing. If something is changing and the situation is becoming unmanageable, or the situation is potentially going to go bad, it is up to you to make a decision to rectify that before it gets to that end point. Because you don't want it to get to that end point to where now your back's against the wall and you got to figure out a way to try to make this work. No. Why do that if you don't have to? Just think of the plan then, adjust, and take care of it before it gets to that situation. So that's what I did. I adjusted before it got real bad. And now I'm in a better situation. It's similar to knowing when to pivot. You got to see the situations for what they are. And I hate to say predict, but you kind of got to predict where it's headed. What's going to happen in the long run. And what can potentially happen. And then you adjust from there. And put yourself in a situation to where you can win and not lose. So that's what I've done. And you got to do that for yourself. You got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and that you're putting yourself in the best situations to where you can win. And if something unexpected happens, you're able to adjust to it and still make that situation work. It worked for me, and it can work for you. I'm Jeuse Kastoan, and this is Hard Reset.